Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The Los Angeles sun beat down fiercely on the asphalt of the private tarmac, making the metallic reflections of the city's most luxurious private jet shimmer. Isabella Montclair, a billionaire known for her ruthless temperament and flamboyant style, stepped out of her gleaming black limousine, her heels clicking on the ground like thunder. Her ever-vigilant assistants preceded her every step, carrying bags, files, and the latest smartphones. But the calm of the hangar was immediately shattered by a cry of frustration. The private jet, the centerpiece of her collection, wouldn't start. The engine, despite being maintained by the best engineers, remained silent, stubbornly refusing to respond. The technicians exchanged embarrassed glances, hesitant to tell the truth. They were overwhelmed. Isabella felt a surge of anger rising within her. Nothing would ever stand in her way, and certainly not a simple engine. That's when Andre Johnson arrived. Tall and slender, dressed in his oil-stained mechanic's overalls, he advanced with calm determination. His dark eyes scrutinized every detail, his expert hands gliding over the metal as if they recognized the engine's very soul. Despite Isabella's gleaming luxury and overwhelming prestige, he showed neither fear nor nervousness. He wasn't there to impress, he was there to fix it. Without a word, Andre put down his tools and began the inspection. He opened the cowlings, touched the cables, listened to the mechanical whirring, and almost murmured to himself, "Ah, that's the problem." With a few precise, fluid movements, the engine seemed to respond to his presence. A few sparks, a subtle adjustment, and the jet's purr was heard, clear and powerful. Isabella's assistant stepped back, gaping in amazement. Isabella, standing a few meters away, felt her heart race. Never had she seen a man handle machinery with such mastery, such natural ease. Her eyes followed Andre's every move, fascinated. He asked for nothing, sought no attention, and yet, he captivated the attention of everyone on the scene. You fixed it?" she asked, her voice trembling despite herself. Andre straightened up, wiped his hands on his trousers and simply replied, "Yes, madam. As you can see, it is ready to fly." A silence fell, heavy with tension and curiosity. Isabella felt a warmth she had never known take hold of her. In the face of all this luxury, all this power, a simple, humble, and incredibly talented man had just reminded her of a forgotten truth: some strengths are measured neither in money nor in influence, but in passion and competence. At that precise moment, Isabella knew that her life had just changed, and that Andre Johnson was not just a mechanic. He was the one who had just shattered all her certainties, the one who had just won her admiration and, unexpectedly, her heart. Andre Johnson carefully put away his tools, his face marked by the fatigue of a whole morning spent under the tarmac sun. He loved his job in a way few people could understand. Each engine had its own rhythm, its own personality, and all you had to do was listen to it to repair what seemed irreparable. Isabella Montclair, still in her striking red dress, stood apart for a moment, watching the man who had just saved her jet. For someone used to everything bending to her will, this scene was disconcerting. No engineer, no expert had ever impressed her like this. But this man, this black mechanic, modest and focused, had succeeded where entire teams had failed. "You are truly impressive," she said finally, her voice softer than usual. Andre looked up and offered her a polite smile, without arrogance or excessive pride. "Thank you, madam. I'm just doing my job." She stepped forward, captivated by his simplicity and confidence. Her eyes followed his every move, his hands moving with precision over the engine components. He didn't speak much, but each movement seemed to tell a story of passion, perseverance, and raw talent. I didn't think anyone could fix this engine so quickly," she murmured. Andre sat up and ran a hand through his dark hair, wiping away a few drops of sweat. "Every problem has a solution. You just have to know where to look." Isabella felt a shiver run down her spine. Andre's calm, almost composed voice contrasted sharply with the tumult of her own world of contracts, money, and power. She had never met anyone who soothed her so completely without even meaning to. She took a thermos of coffee out of her bag and handed it to him. Here. You must be hot with all that work. André raised an eyebrow, surprised by the gesture, but accepted the coffee with a grateful smile. Thank you, madam. That's kind of you. For the first time in a long time, Isabella found herself speaking without calculating her words, without masking her emotions. You know, I'm not used to feeling this way, she said, gesturing vaguely toward the hangar and the jet. It's strange, but I find it fascinating. You're fascinating. André felt his heart beat a little faster, but he remained professional. Yet, behind his reserve, there was a new warmth, a feeling he had never experienced with someone from his world so far removed from his own. Thank you, he replied simply. I'm just doing my job. But I'm glad you like it. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the sound of other planes' engines and the wind rustling across the tarmac. In that suspended moment, two worlds collided, the world of wealth and power, and the world of talent, humility, and passion. And for Isabella, something had just changed forever. I would like you to stay to see the flight, she said, a new gleam in her eyes. André looked at her, a slight smile on his lips. With pleasure, madam. And at that moment, without yet knowing it, they had both just initiated a connection that would change their lives. The next day, Isabella couldn't stop thinking about André. Every time she saw the jet in operation, her mind returned to the image of his expert hands, the quiet concentration on his face, and the unexpected gentleness of his voice. In her world of contracts, luxury, and competition, she had never felt such admiration, nor such curiosity for someone outside her sphere. She made an unusual decision for her, to contact André directly to offer him another job, under the pretext of a routine check of his jet. When he replied, calm and professional as always, she felt a strange sense of relief. Good morning, Mrs. Montclair. Do you need a routine checkup? He asked. Yes, if you are available, she replied, her voice betraying a hint of anticipation. The hangar was silent that morning. André was working meticulously, checking every detail of the engine, but this time, Isabella stayed close, watching, fascinated by every movement. She noticed the way he handled the tools, as if they were natural extensions of his hands. She saw the respect he had for the machine, but also the passion he put into every gesture. You know, she said, breaking the silence, I have never met anyone who transforms their work into something so captivating. André looked up, a slight smile playing on his lips. I suppose that if you love what you do, the rest becomes almost secondary. She smiled, astonished by his simplicity and depth. Isabella, used to self-serving flattery and calculated speeches, sensed something rare and true in his words. You are different, she finally admitted, a little hesitantly. André looked at her, his eyes dark and frank, and simply replied. Different can be good or bad, madam. It's up to you to judge. Isabella's heart beat faster. She realized she never felt this way with anyone, neither admiring, nor intimidated, nor deeply intrigued. But with André, all of these feelings swirled together in a strange and pleasant vortex. While he worked, she approached and sat on a stool, observing his precise and methodical movements. Time seemed to stretch out. The other technicians came and went, but she only saw André. Every smile he returned, every simple exchange of words, drew her a little closer to him. Are you sure I can trust you with everything I tell you? She asked, a little mischievously. Absolutely, madam. I never betray trust. These words, simple yet powerful, brought a warmth to her chest. Isabella understood that it was not only her talent that she admired, but her integrity, her consistency, and a humility that she had almost never encountered. At the end of the day, the jet was immaculate, ready to take off at any moment. Isabella stood up, approached André, and, unexpectedly, said to him, I hope this isn't the last time I see you. André, surprised by this raw and unexpected honesty, looked at her seriously. Me neither, madam. And in this simple exchange, an invisible bond was being woven, fragile but powerful, announcing that what had just begun between them would be far from ordinary. In the days that followed, Isabella couldn't stop thinking about André. Every time she saw a jet or heard the roar of an engine, her mind automatically returned to him. This humble, focused black mechanic had left an indelible mark on her. She found herself imagining his presence, his calm voice, his precise movements. And yet, she knew that between their worlds lay an almost insurmountable gulf. One morning, Isabella decided to visit André at the hangar under the pretext of routine. She wanted to see him work, but she also wanted to get to know him a little better. André, true to form, was already there, his hands covered in oil and his eyes glued to the engine of a jet he was maintaining for another client. "Good morning, Mrs. Montclair," he said with a slight smile, surprised but polite. "Hello, André. I just wanted to see how you are," she replied, a little nervously. While he worked, Isabella sat nearby, watching his every move. She noticed the patience with which he handled the pieces, the absolute concentration on his face, and the almost artistic precision of his gestures. It was mesmerizing. She had never seen anyone work with such passion and precision. "You know," she said finally, "you surprise me a little more each day. I've never met anyone like you." "Thank you, madam," replied André, maintaining his professional neutrality. "I suppose everyone has their strengths." The mere sound of his voice stirred something within her. Isabella realized she wanted to stay, even without any practical reason, simply to watch him at work. And the longer she stayed, the more she felt the warmth she had tried to ignore since their first encounter. As André was reassembling an engine panel, Isabella moved a little closer, curious. Their hands accidentally brushed against each other as she handed him a tool. The contact was brief, but enough to ignite a spark between them. André looked up and met her gaze, and a tense silence fell. "You are surprising," he said finally, a slight smile on his lips. "And you are intriguing," she replied, her heart pounding. For the first time in a long time, Isabella allowed herself to let her guard down. She smiled sincerely, laughing at the little jokes he made naturally, something none of her associates had ever managed to elicit from her. André, aware of the connection that was forming, remained professional, but he couldn't deny the strange warmth rising within him. Isabella was bold, fascinating, and at the same time, strikingly real. She wasn't afraid of him, his simplicity, or his world. And this authenticity touched him deeply. By the end of the morning, the jet was perfectly maintained. Isabella stood up, hesitated for a moment, then said, "You know, I don't think I'll ever tire of watching you work. And I think I'll never tire of seeing your reactions when I succeed at what others cannot," replied André with a discreet wink. This small, light and natural exchange sealed a bond that was still fragile but undeniable. In this hangar, surrounded by metal, oil and roaring engines, an unexpected beginning of complicity had just been born, and neither of them could ignore it. A few weeks had passed since André and Isabella's first meeting, and each visit to the hangar became a small adventure for her. Isabella had found excuses to show up regularly, sometimes to have the jet checked, sometimes simply to watch André work. Every interaction was a mixture of admiration and curiosity, a subtle game where unspoken words conveyed far more than spoken words. One morning, Isabella arrived at the hangar earlier than usual. André was already there, focused on a tricky engine. When he looked up and saw her, he couldn't help but smile slightly. "Good morning, Mrs. Montclair," he said calmly. "Hello, André," she replied, her eyes shining with an emotion she could no longer hide. She approached him gently, trying not to disturb his work, but unable to resist the urge to stay close. Their conversations became increasingly natural, punctuated by playful teasing and intense glances. Isabella was fascinated by his patience, precision, and humility, rare qualities in her world of luxury and superficiality. "You know, André," she said finally, "I never thought anyone could captivate me so much with an engine, a tool, a simple gesture." "There's an art to everything we do," he replied with a slight smile. "If you put your heart into it, even mechanics can become fascinating. Isabella felt her heart clench. For the first time, she allowed herself to admire someone without barriers, without masks or power games. She realized that her fascination with André went far beyond simple professional admiration. As André checked the last detail of the engine, Isabella took another step toward him, almost instinctively. Their hands brushed again as she handed him a small tool that had fallen to the ground. This time, the contact lasted a moment longer. André's eyes met hers, and an electric spark seemed to pierce the air. "You are incredible," he murmured. "And you, unexpected," she replied, her cheeks slightly pink. A knowing silence fell, broken only by the hum of an engine. Isabella felt she no longer wanted to back down. In that fragile yet intense moment, she understood that her feelings could no longer remain secret. "André," she said with rare sincerity, I think I can no longer ignore what I feel." "Me neither," he replied, hesitant but honest, unable to hide the truth of his emotions. Their eyes met, and a soft, knowing smile played on their lips. For the first time, Isabella felt vulnerable without fear, and André felt his heart beat faster for this woman who dared to be herself, even in front of someone from such a different world. She gently took his hand, and he squeezed it without hesitation. At that moment, a feeling of certainty settled between them. This connection, born in a hangar amidst engines and oil, went far beyond mere chance. It was the promise of a story that would change their lives. And in the silence of the hangar, amidst the jets ready for takeoff, Isabella knew she was ready to take a bold step. The moment to reveal her feelings to the world was approaching, and André, unaware of it yet, would be at the center of this unexpected and momentous gesture. The hangar was bustling that day. Photographers, journalists, and a few curious onlookers were there, drawn by the arrival of Isabella's jet for a media flight. Everything was perfectly orchestrated, as always, except that no one suspected that the real show wasn't on the plane, but in the hangar. André Johnson was kneeling beneath the main engine, focused on a final check. His expert hands manipulated each part with precision. Isabella watched him from a distance, her heart pounding. She knew she had to act now, without delay. Everything she had felt these past few weeks, all her admiration, all her emotion, had to be revealed to the world. "André," she said in a voice that immediately caught his attention. He looked up in surprise and straightened slightly. Isabella stepped towards him, her heels clicking on the floor, her gaze fixed on him with an intensity he had never seen before. The murmurs of the assistants and journalists had fallen silent as they sensed the gravity of the scene. "Since I met you," she said, "my certainties about the world have changed. I saw your talent, your humility, your strength, and I understood something I had never felt before." André felt a shiver run down his spine. Every word Isabella spoke was filled with sincerity, and he knew that this woman, used to controlling everything, had just revealed herself completely to him. "André, I don't want to hide what I feel. I want everyone to know how much you mean to me." At these words, Isabella did something unexpected. She knelt before him, pulling out a small black box she had kept hidden in her pocket. Journalists instinctively rushed forward, their cameras capturing every moment. "André Johnson," she murmured, her eyes shining, "will you marry me?" The hangar fell into absolute silence. The assistants, the technicians, and even the curious onlookers held their breath. André froze for a moment, unable to believe what he had just heard. His eyes welled up with tears. He had always dreamed of a genuine relationship, but he never imagined that this moment would come like this, in this workplace where it had all begun. "Yes, yes. 1,000 times yes," he cried finally, taking Isabella's hand with emotion. A burst of joy swept through the hangar. Photographers captured the moment, assistants applauded, and even passers-by smiled at this unexpected and moving scene. Isabella stood up, took André in her arms, and for the first time, they allowed themselves to show their happiness to the world. "You fixed my jet," she said with a smile and a slight laugh, "but I think you just fixed my heart too." André smiled, moved, and replied, "And you have just shown the world that love knows neither class, nor wealth, nor borders. That day, the hangar, the jets, and all the surrounding luxury became the setting for an authentic and timeless story. Andre Johnson was no longer just the brilliant mechanic who had repaired a billionaire's jet, he was the man who had won her heart, and Isabella Montclair was no longer just a woman of power and fortune, she was the one who had dared to love and show that love in front of everyone. And so, two worlds separated by society, wealth and appearances came together in a gesture of sincerity and passion that would remain etched in memories forever.